Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are drawing the Punisher and we are going to be talking about posing, which is another thing we always talk about because such is the nature of these things. And so detailing is going to be a big part of this because there's a lot of little elements here which require some detailing. We're also doing a redesign because I'm sort of revisiting the design that I did back whenever I did Punisher really early in the art show, because this is one of those characters who I'm sort of revisiting. So I'm sort of gonna see what I can do about this this redesign. I've done some elements here. Again, there's some proportional stuff which I'll be talking about here as well. But yeah, so there's a few different elements of detailing and all this different stuff, which I think are important to go over. But yeah, I think that. Without further ado, I'll just roll the intro and then I'll actually show you what I have. So yeah, anyways. So yeah, this is what I've got. So obviously we've got our design here as it stands. And let's start with the face, because the face is the big sort of thing which I want to maybe talk a little bit about. So I've given him this little plaster over his nose, and I have a little dent in his eyebrow. This is a lot more traditional than the original face, or the face was back whenever I did it in the original video. Because it's like a flat top, basically, was his haircut. But he did also have a beard. Now, I have also drawn the beard, but I'm not sure about it, so I'm sort of just leaving it as a separate layer so I can have a think about it. I kind of like the idea of the beard, but I also feel like it's not necessary, so I'm not sure. I'll have to think about it, because I'm obviously going to be drawing the face without it in the first place. So whether or not I choose to include it is another story entirely. So we'll see about the beard. I'm not sure about it. We'll think about it. Yeah, give him a little plaster over his nose because I feel like that sort of suits as well of him having sort of like a mean kind of beat up face. And again, I've given you these sorts of like harsh lines and everything because I sort of envision Punisher as being like 40s to 50s is sort of the age range that I would think of him. Now, so proportions. Let's go to there next. So, proportions. As you can see, he's quite bulky. He has what I'm going to describe as a triangle body, of where his body is effectively shaped like an inverse triangle, flat, down into a point, and then he's got sort of normal-ish legs, but he's got a very long torso, which is very, very bulky. He's got very broad shoulders, and the idea here as well is that he's wearing heavy body armor, as you can see from the sort of high collar on this bomb vest, and that's sort of the idea, is that it's like a kind of heavy body armor, sort of bomb resistant sort of thing. And then this is an element which I had in the original design as well, the big body armor, and also the pouches being the pouches at the front kind of being the ends of the skull, that the skull sort of fades down into these big pouches at the front. And then I've also given him the trench coat over that because I sort of feel like if you're not doing the trench coat, what are you doing? I feel like he sort of needs the trench coat. I think the trench coat, it looks far cooler. There is actually a change I'm going to be making here. I mostly left this part of the coat outwards just so that I could see what I was doing. But I'm going to tuck this part of the coat in front, so it is going to cover the front of that boot. But I think it'll look better because so far here this looks a little too bulky and weird, if not quite right shape-wise there. And also this part of the coat is too long. This needs to end like around there or something like that because it's way too long as it stands. But right, so that's yeah, like proportional stuff and then a little bit of design elements. Now obviously he's got two guns in his hands. And I was going to make them two much bigger guns just to sort of oversell the strength a little bit because again he's got a triangle body. So this is the thing, I was thinking of maybe giving him bigger guns, but I decided on something that was a little bit more reasonable. So he's got a short shotgun, which to me at least I think the shotgun is I think a shotgun is cool. Because it's one of those big sort of bombastic kinds of guns. And then I was originally going to give him like a long sort of assault rifle in the other hand, but I decided on an SMG, something with a like sort of kind of generic-ish SMG. was the idea I went for. Now again, this is something which I talked about last time, because last time, whenever I did Punisher, one of the things which I talked a lot about was drawing guns, and how at the time I would basically say that it is foolish to draw guns without any sort of reference. I still say it's not a good idea to draw them without any sort of reference. However, nowadays I typically would only use a reference image on the screen in front of me, and I'd sort of just have the general idea of it, because this shotgun isn't any one shotgun in particular. It's sort of just a generic short shotgun. It's the same thing with the SMG. It's not a specific SMG specifically, but it is just sort of a generic SMG. It's not any one SMG in particular. Now, a thing as well, as part of this design, is the gloves and boots will be white, because I think that's a bit more interesting to have a little bit more color going on in the design than just black. I want it to be black and white. Those are the Punisher's colors. However, I'm not going to have as much white in here as there was in the original design. The original design, the inside of the coat was white, which I think is too much. I think the shoulders of the coat will still be white though. Maybe not pure white, but like a dull white. And then the gloves and boots will also be white, and then obviously the skull, and then the pouches will be white. And I might incorporate some like different, like maybe some greys or something like that in for the like the side holsters, because that's obviously where other guns would be. But yeah, in terms of the sort of design elements here, this is again, I wouldn't say it's like the most radical redesign until the beard goes on. That's whenever you're like, okay, this is very different. But it's still, I think even with the beard, it's still very identifiable as the Punisher. But yeah, so without the beard, I think it's obviously far more identifiable as the Punisher. But yeah, I think even with it, it's still very clearly the Punisher. I'm not sure how I feel about the beard. I might not do it, but I also went for a very particular sort of look in terms of the pose here, with the sort of like head tilt back. That feels, this is a very sort of, I'm not sure who the artist was, but the sort of painted covers that you'd get for the Punisher Max, where you obviously where his eyes would be sort of always in shadow. You'd never really see his eyes. And there's a lot of those poses where his head would always be like tilted back or something like that. But yeah, I gave him like a big mean head, but I did make the head smaller to make the rest of his body look bigger, because that's a little trick you can do. It's not a very hard one either. You just make the head a little bit smaller, then the rest of the body looks far bigger. But yeah, the gloves, I made some adjustments too. These aren't exactly the same as the gloves I drew originally. They're still fingerless gloves, but they've got these little bits of padding along the knuckles, which would be black. And then obviously there's the opening in the back of the hand as well. Again, I generally don't think there's going to be quite as much detailing going on with the trench coat. I think the coat will be mostly pretty simple, and it won't have a huge amount going on with it. Again, like it comes across as being much bigger because the armor underneath is sort of pushing it out, which is why obviously the neck of it is opening all the way back here, where it probably should be opening here, because the color on the armor is pushing that out. So yeah, this is obviously a very bulky design, but yeah. So yeah, that's sort of the all the posing and detailing and all that stuff. The detailing comes down to, like, again, like the guns, and then obviously the design elements. Obviously he's got sort of baggier trousers that sort of bunch up around these little straps and pouches and all this stuff. So yeah, I didn't want to go too pouch mad, because that is a real risk, especially with these sorts of designs. It's very easy to go a little too pouch mad. But yeah, he's got all these different holsters and things like that in here. You can obviously presume that there's maybe some more holsters on the inside of the jacket, or on the inside of the coat. I would probably put like a strap on these guns, because the idea would be then that they would hang on his shoulders inside the jacket, whereas I'm probably not going to do that, just for the sake of keeping the lines sort of easy to follow, because I feel like if there's too many lines around here, it'll start getting far too messy. So I just want to sort of keep that a little bit cleaner in that sense. So one of the things which I really did like with the original Punisher drawing that I did was the background. I did this sort of like paint strokes, black fading into white, which was then coming up and sort of interacting in that nice way. That's basically the exact same thing I'm going to do here. I'm going to have like a black and white gradient, which then sort of mixes in with all the different paint strokes and stuff like that, and I think that'll look nice. Because I still really liked how that looked anyways at the time. And I want to see if I can do that sort of thing again, but a little better. And that's sort of, again, a large part of what I'm trying to do here is the same sort of thing, but a little bit better. Because typically whenever I've been doing any of these revisits recently, I typically go for something very different, whereas here I'm going for something very similar, but just updated is generally the idea. Updated and I think a little better. But yeah, I think probably we're pretty good to just start as it stands. I'm still not sure about the beard. I'm not sure about the beard, I have to say. I like it, but because he's still got the slick back hair and it's just the few little tufts of hair that fall down, it's not quite like the messy flat top that I gave him originally. It's still distinctly the Punisher, I think, but yeah, I'm not sure. Because he does still have a giant meathead, because I think that's a big part of that is a very big element of the character, is that he's got a giant head. It's not like a big element of the character, but you know what I mean. Typically artists draw him to be sort of a big meaty guy, and I think that's something which I want to keep here anyways. The beard does somewhat mask the scale of his head, but it also it rounds out his jaw, where his jaw is ordinarily quite square and flat. So, I mean, yeah, I'll think about it. Regardless, I'm going to be drawing the face without it first, so who knows. Regardless, I think that's good enough, and I'll just start. So yeah, I'll do these details, and then I'll be back to do the colors, which I'll probably not have much to do there, but, you know, that's just life. Anyways, I'll do this, and I'll be back to do said colors. Anyways. Okay, that's our details done, and surprisingly quickly, actually, under 2 hours. I was not expecting it to be that quick. Um, so yeah, I changed those things which I said I was going to change. I made adjustments to the coat and all that stuff, and I decided to give him the beard. I just feel like it looks a little bit more distinct. It makes the design stand out a little bit more, I think. And yeah, I don't think I really altered much. Other than that, I feel like obviously in the details a lot of this stuff looks a little bit cleaner now. Where stuff like the guns were a little messier before, especially I think the SMG. It looked very messy against the... No. For a minute there I thought I'd forgotten to put in a line, but actually no, that's fine. The SMG especially looked a little messy against the rest of everything here, because obviously with the way I do the base kit, you do everything first, and then I need all the basic stuff first, and then I add all the extra bits on top. So the guns were literally like the last thing I did in the base kit, so it was all kind of messy. But I think everything looks a little cleaner there now, at least. So yeah, color-wise, how is some of this going to work? So largely I think I'm going to leave the plaster on his nose as white. I'm just going to have that be the same white as everything else. Shotgun is probably going to be a light silver, whereas the SMG will probably be a dark grey kind of color. There's going to be multiple colors going on in both of these, I think, so the guns are going to be a little bit of a pain in terms of detailing. A lot of the rest of this stuff isn't going to be too bad, I think. I am going to need to do some sort of placeholder color. I think I'm probably going to go for maybe like a blue or purple or something, because the tones that I'm going to be using... Okay, I definitely don't want it to be that vivid. It'd be hard to see against that. That's more of what I want. But yeah, the tones of what I'm going to be using are going to largely be blue toned. The black is going to be blue toned. I've just realized I have forgotten something, and it's the mild little bits of detailing on the coat, which of course I forgot. It's this bit here, which is going to be the part of the coat that is white, and then that also needs to be visible here. Just throw it in like that. Not hugely important, just enough that it is visible so that I know to do it later, because otherwise I will probably forget. Yeah, otherwise the coat doesn't need a huge amount of detailing. I'll just put a little seam on the inside of the arm, because it's kind of normally where you'd maybe see something like that. Yeah, your seams are normally on the inside of the arm versus the outside. Just throw in something like that, something simple. Right, okay, that's those bits just fixed there. There's nothing else with the coat I needed to do, nothing else with the gloves, nothing else with the rest of the body armor. I was considering making it so that the body armor had a little bit of muscle definition in it, but I actually don't think that's necessary. I think it being kind of flat is what I want, because that doubles down on his size. I'm not sure if... this was something which I wasn't sure about, is this here, his arm. Because my thought here is obviously that the armor it's like a vest, basically. And then the question is he wearing like a t-shirt under that, or is he wearing like a jumper or something? I'd say it's probably a t-shirt, because that's the sort of Punisher thing, right? It's the t-shirt. So obviously it's the big bulky body armor, and under that is the t-shirt. Because he has to have his logo all over him. So as soon as that body armor comes off, he's also got the logo on his t-shirt, so I think that's funny. I think that is appropriate for the character. So I suppose I needn't linger too long. I'll just carry on with these colors, and I'll probably do... well, no, I'll do the basics of the background, and then I'll do the full background during the painted shading, which will be the following section. So yes, anyways, I'll do these colors, and then I'll be back to do the painted shading. So yeah. Alright, that's our paint, that is our colours done. Now is the painted shading. And yeah, largely we're sticking to a fairly monotone colour palette. Reasonably, yeah, as I say, monotonal, monochrome. Yeah, I'd say monochrome is probably more accurate because we're only sticking within the sort of grey zone here. Black and white, that's mostly what we're going for. And it's going to be interesting once I get to the grading maps because I'm going to need to be doing black and white predominantly on those. So that's going to be quite dull. We'll see what happens, I suppose. I did make parts of these, again, they skew slightly, like the trousers skew slightly brown. The same with like a lot of the grips on the guns and stuff like that, that skews slightly brown and stuff. So those aren't like pure black the same way the coat is, but obviously even that's not pure black. Same with the body armor, it's just darker. And yeah, the grips are darker, not quite blue. They're more of a brown. So yeah, I've largely stuck to the sort of blue tones, apart from the guns and the trousers. Mostly the guns, they're mostly blue toned to a degree. The silver is slightly green toned, I think, but the trousers and the sort of like accents on the guns are more brown toned, red toned sort of thing. Largely I don't think the rest of this should be too difficult or time consuming, provided I get on with it. So I think, the colors really, there's not much to talk about. They're fairly simple. They're fairly simple, just grays and blacks and whites. That's really all there is going on here. It's just the Punisher. So you're not going to see a huge amount of color variety. But yeah, I think the like little white shoulder padding and the white accent along the collar works for the coat, and obviously the body armor and the pouches, I think that obviously works with the white as well. The white is obviously the big pop here that you're going to see, pop of color, I suppose, that you're going to see, because the rest of this is again mostly black, because again that is sort of the nature of the Punisher, is it's mostly black. But anyways, I will do this painted shading, and I'll do the rest of the background here as well, which will just be paint strokes of the sort of black and the white mixing and creating some weird different little shades. So we'll see how that looks once we're at the end. But yeah, now it's time for the painted shading. The detailed shading will then follow along with the light line. So yeah, anyways, I'll get on with this. Alright, that is our painted shading done. I was able to get through that reasonably quick, all things considered, and obviously I did our background as well. I did the sort of like smoke, the paint streaks, the sort of going up, the white going up and then the black going down, and they sort of interact and they form these sorts of like little weird clumps around here, as you can see in here and stuff like that. They sort of clump in weird ways, and they leave these weird little marks. So it all sort of blends together nicely in a very sort of, again, as I say, like a kind of a very painted way, because I'm using watercolor brushes for that. But I decided to add a little bit of a very light sort of sheen to parts of the coat, just to make it look like a bit more of a sort of so that it looks a bit more like a beaten sort of leather material, that it's sort of like kind of like a worked kind of leather material. You can see it around here mostly. I'd say this is the most visible part of it, where it sort of has that kind of sheen, but it also looks sort of like like very hard and like beaten. so that it has a bit more of like a weathered look to it. And again, those are the little things you can just sort of get away with whenever you're just doing kind of little bits of paint here and there. Even digital paint, it still works. So right, now we've got our detailed shading to do. And in the interest of time, I'm going to try and do this pretty quick. But realistically speaking, there's lots of this which I don't have to be too detailed about. For example, I can like the light here that I've got for my detailed shading is a very pale yellow, and the dark I have is a bit of the darker shade I have is a sort of like a bit of a duller kind of bluey purple. So that will sort of, again, it will all remain very subtle. I don't need it to be super vivid colors that we're working with here, because we're not working with vivid colors in the first place. This is going to get kind of washed out by the gradient maps. So this is the thing. We'll see how all that works later. But for now, I'll do the detailed shading and the light line, and then I'll do all the gradient maps and stuff like that afterwards, and that'll be us. So yeah, anyways, I'll get on with this. Okay. That is our detailed shading and light line done. So that is basically us done. I just need to do the gradient maps now. So now I will do just that. So let's have a look. Gradient map. Let's have a think about this. Because yeah, I mean, just leaving it in black and white isn't obviously going to really do us any favors. It's just going to wash all the colors out. So we're going to want to try and keep this subtle to a degree. But we still want it to be somewhat visible. So make this slightly yellow. Maybe put it right there. I want it to actually be, I think I want it to be pretty subtle. So what's between those? Between that would be red. Then put it about here. Red I think works. Yeah, black, white, and red. That sort of works. That sort of works, doesn't it? That's appropriate within reason. It's still muted, it's still subtle. Yeah, it's just a sort of, yeah, okay, yeah, no, that works. Obviously this is far too blown out for that. So we're going to want to put it on soft light, we're going to bring it down. I would say we're going to want this at 60%. We're going to want this to be subtle, because the red will very much seep in there, so I think we want to keep that reasonably subtle. Alright, let's go for luminosity, bring this down to, well, I actually want to have this at like 25%, have this one be a little higher, so that it mutes it a little bit more. So what's more muted? Put it below because that makes it darker. Duplicate that. Bring it up, and then make that a color burn. But I want to still keep the color burn pretty light, because the color burn will, yeah, it'll sort of blow things out a little bit more. Yeah, it sort of blows them out a little bit, and it makes things a lot darker as well. Alright, we're nearly there, Now I need to add the texture, and I think I'm going to keep the texture pretty strong. I think I'll want to keep the texture pretty strong, because it'll sort of help with, especially with the different kind of paints in the background there. I'd say that'll work for us. Let's say that'll work. Let's have a look. Let's see how this looks. I mean, just leaving it like that, and that's technically on 100%, even though it says 5% over here, is pretty good. So I think I'm going to put this at 40%, because that's high for nowadays. That's what we used to put it on all the time. It sort of, yeah, brings up the contrast. Is maybe how I'd say it. Yeah, it sort of brings up the contrast a little bit. Yeah, that looks appropriate, I think. That looks good. it brings up the contrast a bit. Okay, well, I suppose that's basically us. Yeah, that's basically us done. This wasn't actually as long as I thought it'd be. This did take about pretty much the exact same length as the last one, more or less. We're nearly 4 hours. So yeah, we're a little under 4 hours. So I mean, yeah, we're not all that dissimilar in length from the previous episode. So I suppose all things considered, it's not too bad. I suppose, well, in terms of actual in terms of episode time, who knows, because in terms of recording time we're not that dissimilar from the previous episode, but in terms of how long the actual episode is, that could be remarkably different for all I know. So we'll see, I guess. Yeah, this wasn't actually as hard as I thought it'd be either. Again, most of the difficulty lay in the details, and obviously the heat of the room. So, you know, generally speaking, in the summer, these technically take longer, even though the recordings aren't necessarily longer. It takes more of the day because I have to take more breaks because of how warm it is. So, yeah, realistically speaking, this didn't actually take any longer recording-wise, but it took quite a lot longer in terms of actual daytime. It's technically, it's the same time now that it was yesterday. But what I mean to say is that if I were to do this in the winter, the hour amount would probably be the same. However, the time of day would be significantly earlier for me to finish this. But yeah, I'm content with that. I'm happy with that. That's, again, as I say, it's not like super different than the original version of this design that I did. It's a little updated, a little bit better, a little bit, I think, more interesting looking. It's a slightly updated version of the same design, and yeah, I think it makes for a better, more interesting design. And yeah, I think I like the sort of triangle body, kind of meat man look. I think that sort of works and is appropriate for the character. But yeah. With all that said, I think that's a good place to leave it. So I'll say my outro and then I'll say goodbye to you. So, yeah, if you like the video, do whatever it is that you'd normally do, whether that be liking it or not. I would, of course, prefer if you liked it, but I can't make you do that. So, do what you normally do, whether that be liking or not. Same deal, if you want to subscribe, you can do it. I'd like it if you did, but I can't make you. So, just do whatever it is that you feel comfortable with doing. I don't need to tell you where the subscribe button is. You've presumably watched a YouTube video before, but if I do, it is below the video. So, you know, if that helps, I suppose that's good. If you have a suggestion for what you'd like to see me draw in the future, you can leave a comment, nicely worded, or don't do it at all. And if you choose to watch the next video, I'll see you next time. So, with all that said, that is us. So I'll say goodbye and I'll leave you. So, bye-bye.